And so my wife's family, in the meantime, they all became evangelical Christians. My brother-in-law, Sam, who's just an amazing guy, was one of the first guys that I had seen a real baptism. And he got baptized, and he he was just always around me and talking to me about God and Jesus. And I didn't want to hear it, but
you gave him a stiff arm a few times.
But I respected him. He was my brother. I hate calling him brother-in-law because he's my brother. And so he would be around me, and then my other brother-in-law, Bernard, was doing that also. And then my wife had found this church on Yelp, and she was like, hey, you got to just come with me. And I was like, I don't want to go. I was making excuses. And we had tried to go to a couple churches before that, and I would go and leave and do the exact same thing I was doing before. So I go to this church, which was a mile from my house, called CB Church, and I sat in the very back row. And when the pastor started speaking, who's like my best friend now, one of my best friends, Pastor Scott, he was preaching, and it was like I was in the back row, but his face was like right on my face. He was looking at me basically the whole time, and preaching. I can't even remember exactly what the message was, but I felt something happen in my body. I felt my body heal in that service, like 100% heal. I could literally feel that. And so I was crying and crying and crying. And then my pastor, he hugs everybody. When you leave church, he hugs every single person in there. And I was walking out, and he brought his hand to my head, and he pulled me close to him, and he was like, hey, he's like, I want to hear your story, man. I know you got a story. He's like, I'm going to call you tomorrow. And sure enough, my pastor called me the next day. But before we get into that, even right after church, I went home, and I threw away all my medication, which, I'm not suggesting everybody do that and all that, but I knew what had happened. And so my wife started crying, and she was screaming like, those are the only things keeping you alive. You're going to die even sooner. And I was like, Katya, something happened. Everything changed for me in there. I said, I'm not even the same person. I know, this sounds crazy, but just believe me. And that was the last day I drank. That was the last day I smoked. That was the last day I took any of those meds. That was the last day, I stopped cursing, and just everything had